welcome back to my channel and welcome to my very first Mommy Monday video after having my second baby. I feel like a new woman. I feel like this postpartum period, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling refreshed. My baby, oh my goodness, he's a month old, you guys, and I feel like this past month just completely flew by. Let's talk about my birth story. I want to talk about it before I forget. I want it to be fresh in my mind when I film this video. I find myself going back and watching my birth story video for my first a lot just because, I don't know, it's kind of interesting to me. We're gonna be some girlfriends here and just chat about it. I hope that, you know, if you're an expectant mother and you're really nervous about labor and delivery, maybe you're searching on YouTube trying to find labor and delivery stories to get an idea of what's gonna happen, don't be scared. It's really not that bad. It's not scary, and you don't have to expect all these crazy things to go wrong. I feel like a ton of these YouTube videos are like, the worst is gonna happen, my traumatic birth story. Mine was great, and I hope that this can kind of encourage you and get you excited about having your own baby. Before we hop into it, I do want to introduce you to my baby, Landon Michael. He's napping in his own room, in his own crib, like a big boy, and it is just wild. But I did film a little clip earlier before I put him down, so I'll insert that right now. Okay, Landon, your first YouTube appearance. Say hi, YouTube. Everybody, this is Landon. He's 1 month old. He actually turned 1 month old yesterday from the day that I'm filming this video. He is wonderful, you guys. He is the best baby ever. I couldn't ask for a better, more well-behaved baby. He sleeps amazing. He eats amazing. He's gaining weight amazingly. He's already 50% larger than he was when he was born, which is huge. So we're just soaking it all up, and it's about feeding time for him and nap time for him, so he's kind of like, come on, Mom. But this is my sweet Landon. He is pretty much a twin of Lincoln. He was much smaller when he was born, but they're twins. I look at him and I have flashbacks of seeing Lincoln, especially because he wears a lot of the clothes that Lincoln wore. So anyways, say hi, baby. Oh, look at how sweet you are. He's my sweet boy. He has the best personality so far. He's just very chill and laid back. He doesn't really cry. He's not really that fussy. When he does cry, it's like this raspy little, he's the best, and I'm so in love. And yeah, this is baby Landon. Okay, so let's start out with the evening of December 11th. I was 38 and 6, so 38 weeks and 6 days pregnant, just shy of 39 weeks. It was 6 p.m. My sister FaceTimed me. She's a labor and delivery nurse, by the way. So we were chatting. She was like, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel fine. Now, rewind just a little bit to a couple of days prior. I did have a doctor's appointment where I was hooked up to a non-stress test. I still need to film my 9-month pregnancy update. I don't know if that'll go up before this video or after this video. But I wasn't feeling a ton of movement from Landon, so they hooked me up to view his movements, which also monitors your contractions. And I was having pretty consistent contractions when they hooked me up, but my doctor said that those were just practice contractions. And she was right, because I didn't go into labor until a few days later. I was also 4 centimeters dilated, 4.5 centimeters dilated at that appointment. So I knew it was coming, but I was also 4 centimeters dilated with my first for 3 weeks. And I ended up being induced with him. So I was excited, but tried not to get myself too excited. So my sister was like, how are you feeling? And I was like, I feel fine. I feel the same as I did yesterday and the day before, nothing. And then as soon as I hung up with her, it was almost like clockwork. I was like, maybe I do feel something. And so I started timing my contractions because I could feel them. They weren't painful, but I could definitely tell something was happening, tightening. And it was hard for me to distinguish the difference between a contraction and him just moving. That was one of the things I struggled with, but I timed everything. And on the little app I had, they ended up being 4 to 7 minutes apart, and the little box popped up after about an hour of me timing them that said, you should probably head to the hospital. And I was like, huh, interesting. So I told my husband, I was like, you know, maybe we should go to the hospital, like, just to be on the safe side. This is my second baby. I knew I was already 4 centimeters dilated. I was GBS positive. When you are GBS positive, they like to put you on an IV drip for 4 hours prior to having your baby. So I knew I wanted to get to the hospital at least 4 hours early. So I was like, let's just go. Like, I'm feeling a little nervous. I don't want to get there too late. I don't want to end up having this baby on the freeway. I ended up calling and talking to nurse triage, and they were like, yeah, come on in. You know, the worst that'll happen is we'll send you home. So I truly was not expecting to stay at the hospital. I wasn't in pain. My contractions were not painful. They were rhythmic, you know, so like I could feel them, and they kept coming like on a timed interval, but they weren't painful. I could talk through them. I was perfectly fine on the drive to the hospital. In fact, before we left, I like grabbed the last minute things. I sat down and had dinner with my family. I snuggled my 2-year-old. I said goodbye to the dogs. Like, there wasn't a rush by any means. It was just kind of like let's go see, they'll probably send us home. Anyways, we got to the hospital, and I was fine. You know, I walked up to the door all by myself, and it was fine. I wheeled in my own suitcase. They took me back to triage. So triage is where you first go for them to see if you're actually in labor or not. That was different for me because with my first, I was induced, so I skipped the whole triage portion of it. So I went to the triage room, and they hooked me up to the monitor, and I think it was like 2 hours we were sitting there, and after 2 hours or an hour and a half or something like that, the nurse came in and she was like, well, you're not leaving here without a baby. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't expect it, you know? I was just like, really? Like, I was completely thrown off when she said that. I was like, this isn't happening. This isn't real. I'm not in actual labor. She was like, yeah, you're about 5 centimeters dilated. Your contractions are whatever, 3 minutes apart or something like that. And she was like, you're not leaving here without a baby. And I was like, huh. So looking back at my notes, I kept really detailed notes. So I wrote down, started noticing and feeling contractions at about 6 p.m. Started timing them. They were 5 to 7 minutes apart. Didn't think they were real, but went to the hospital just in case. Got to the hospital at 8 p.m. I was monitored for a couple of hours. I was having regular contractions, 4.5 centimeters dilated, 70% effaced, and then a couple of decelerations in baby's heart rate. So I think that is actually why they admitted me instead of sending me home, is because of the decelerations in baby's heart rate. I'm not an expert. I can't really, you know, tell you exactly what that means. They didn't tell me that in triage. It wasn't until after I was admitted that my labor and delivery nurse was like, you see these little dips? And I think it was dips after a contraction, or was it before a contraction? Not during a contraction. They expect decelerations in the heart rate to happen during a contraction, but it's either before or after. It can be an indication that something is going on with baby. So be it the cord is being clamped, or maybe the cord being around their neck, or something like that was happening. And it wasn't ultra concerning because there was just a couple of them, but it was happening. So I think that's probably why they admitted me. I wasn't actually told that. I do know my triage nurse, so she checked my cervix and she was like, you're right there. She's like, you're gonna go into full-blown labor like any minute now. So I don't know, I think it was a combination of that, plus the doctor on call was my doctor, which worked out great. I had seen her just a couple of days prior. She knew exactly my situation. So I think, I don't know. It's interesting because before we went to the hospital, I remember telling my husband, I was like, I wonder if they'll just keep me anyways, because I was already so dilated, and it was my second, and I was GBS positive. I needed the IV drip of the penicillin. And so I was like, I wonder if they'll just keep me, and then if I don't go into full-blown labor, if they'll just induce me, you know, like with Pitocin. And he was like, yeah, I don't know how it works. And I even talked to my sister about it. She was like, yeah, maybe. It just kind of depends. So I kind of wonder if my doctor had that same thought where she was like, let's just admit her. Let's just get this over with. If she doesn't go into labor on her own, we'll put her on Pitocin. You know, I wonder if that's what was going on behind the scenes. who knows? Anyways, they started my IV there in the triage room. I will say that's the worst part for me is the IV. I hate the IV. Ugh, it hurts so bad. And this time they actually put it, I still have the little mark from it, in my wrist. So it was in like the worst possible spot. It was so painful, and I remember like telling the nurse like, it hurts, it hurts. And they're like, that's normal. But anyways, they started my IV in the triage room. By about 10 p.m., I was in my actual labor and delivery room. That was the room that baby was gonna be born in. The nurse started my IV fluids and my antibiotics for being GBS positive. And then I was telling her, I was like, I don't feel like I'm shocked that I was admitted. I don't feel like I'm in labor. And she was like, you're not in like full-blown labor. She was like, you probably have a few hours. You should probably get some rest before things start speeding up. Do you want me to give you something to help you sleep? And I was like, yes. So she actually gave me an Ambien. I had never taken Ambien before. I wasn't sure how my body was gonna react with it, what it was gonna do to me. I feel like it somewhat worked. It didn't knock me out. I didn't like completely black out and sleep for a few hours, but I was able to doze, which is much more than I think I would have been able to do otherwise. So I'm thankful that she did give me the Ambien. They had me monitored all night, you know, the entire time I was in the labor and delivery room. I was able to kind of doze. The nurse came in and out of my room a few times, but I was able to doze until like 6 or 7 a.m. the next day. So that was good. Next thing I have written down is 6:30 a.m. The nurse came in and checked my cervix, or was it the doctor? I can't remember. One or the other came in and checked my cervix, and I was 5.5 centimeters dilated. So I was indeed in labor. I was indeed progressing, but it just wasn't intense labor. It wasn't enough for me to like, you know, feel like I was in labor. But when I found out that I was actually progressing, I was very glad I was at the hospital because, you know, part of me was like, I don't know if I had waited until the morning, would I have had enough time, all of that stuff. So I was indeed progressing. I have written down here, I can feel contractions, but they aren't painful. And then talk about epidural happened. And I remember, so the nurse was like, let me know when you want your epidural. It'll help speed things up. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I don't feel like I'm in labor. Like, I don't need an epidural. I'm not in any pain. Like, yes, I can feel the contractions happening, but I don't know, it felt like baby moving. It didn't feel like cramping or, you know. And so I was like, I don't know, I know eventually I want the epidural, but I don't feel like I need it right now. The nurse talked me into it. She was like, you know what, get it now. There's no need for you to wait. Like, what are you trying to prove here? You don't need to wait. She was like, just get it now. Like, who cares? Just get it now. So I was like, all right. It was the doctor that checked my cervix because I have written down here, doctor mentions she would break my water after epidural was administered. That was another thing, is my water didn't break on its own. It didn't break on its own with my first either. And so breaking your water speeds up labor quite a bit. And so my doctor wanted me to be on the epidural before she did that, just because she knew things would progress super fast after that. So at 8:30 they came in and gave me the epidural. I was a little nervous about the epidural. Well, I was very nervous about the epidural because with my first labor and delivery, my blood pressure dropped like dramatically right after my epidural, and I remember them like rushing in and giving me IV fluid and medicine in my IV, and I was flipping from side to side and this and that, and it was like this big ordeal. And so I just wanted this to be a chill experience, and I was really worried that something like that would happen again. So I kept telling the nurse, like, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. So she had the medicine like in her little pocket ready to go. She was like, I got you. If something happens, we'll make sure it's quick. She even told the anesthesiologist about my situation, and so he had medicine like in his little pocket ready to go to make sure that this wouldn't be a crazy experience. In addition to that, I remember the epidural kind of hurting. I mean, it's not super painful, but it's not pleasant either. It's definitely like a sting in your back. So they give you, so first they like wipe down your back with like antiseptic or whatever. They tape it off, and then they give you a numbing shot to like, I guess, just locally numb your back. And then like the big shot comes in. And so I remember it like hurting, not being pleasant, you know, just kind of like oof. And so it's kind of like when you get your ears pierced, and the first one doesn't hurt, but the second one hurts because you know what to expect. I think that's what this was. I knew what to expect. I knew it was going to be kind of painful, so I was hyping it up in my mind as being more painful than it actually was. So I remember the numbing shot, and then when they put the actual epidural needle in, you get like this cold shot down your back. It like shoots into your back, and it like shoots down your back. And I remember like I could feel it like go down to my butt crack, and I was like, ah, I could feel that. And the anesthesiologist was like, that's good, you're supposed to, you know, that's a good sign. But in the end, I mean, it went by really fast. I squeezed my husband's hands. I had to like crouch over, and I just like held him in front of me, squeezed his hand, squeezed the nurse's hand. I was like, ugh. And in the end, it went by much faster. I'm very grateful that I wasn't also battling contractions during that. I was having contractions, but they weren't painful to me. I know lots of women wait until they get to the point where their contractions are painful, and you have to sit still during your epidural. So I can't imagine trying to have to sit still during a contraction while all of that's going on. Like, I'm thankful I just had to deal with the mind games of the pain. The epidural worked much better this time than it did with my first labor. They worked well both times. I know a lot of people have like horror stories of epidural didn't work. Mine worked well both times, but this time was at my right side, like completely went numb. With my first pregnancy, or my first labor and delivery, I remember I could still feel both legs. I could still lift both legs into stirrups on my own. I felt like I could probably even stand up if I was allowed to. They don't let you, but I felt like I could. This time, my right side was completely numb. Like from the waist down, I couldn't lift my leg. It was like a dead leg. Right side, I could still lift, I could still feel, but I couldn't feel anything in this area, which is what you want. I mean, who cares about your legs? The point is like your uterus and all of that area. So I wrote down, could feel it feel on the right side more than the left side. Right leg was very numb, had no complications or issues as a result of the epidural. I was worried about my blood pressure dropping like it did with my first delivery. So yeah, I didn't have the blood pressure issue this time. It was a seamless process. The anesthesiologist was in the room for like 10 minutes and then he left, and then I was totally fine. I ended up not needing medication. It ended up working pretty quickly. And yeah, at 9:15, my doctor came in and broke my water. And at that point I was 6.5 centimeters dilated. So that was only what, like, I guess 3 hours later, 2 hours later, I had progressed another centimeter all on my own, which is crazy because again, I didn't feel like I was in full-blown labor. At that point, so she broke my water. After she broke my water, Landon's heart rate dropped. And it wasn't like super scary, but they did call in the baby doctor just to take a look at the screen and see what was going on. I had to move positions quite a few times. We put the peanut ball between my legs and I laid on my left side for an hour, then I laid on my right side for another hour. They had me kind of flopping around, finding a position that was comfortable for me and comfortable for Landon, and making sure his heart rate went back to normal. So we were just kind of monitoring it for a while. It wasn't like a, oh my gosh, something scary is happening, but it was kind of like a, we need to keep an eye on this or else something scary could be happening type thing. I think that's pretty normal after your water breaks or your water is broken, because when that happens, the gush of water happens and then baby almost instantly drops. And so they're shifting position in your body very quickly. They're going farther down into your pelvis. And so that could definitely create some uncomfortableness for baby. They have to shift positions. They're in, I don't want to say distress, but they could be stressed, trying to figure out like, okay, something's going on. And so I think it's relatively normal for that to happen. It ended up fixing, you know, we ended up fixing it and it was fine in the end. I have written down here that it was kind of painful laying on my right side. This was the way it was throughout most of my like end of third trimester. Landon was on this side. His back was on this side. It started on this side. He ended up flipping to this side about the last month of pregnancy. And he was like at a spot where I couldn't comfortably lay on my right side. And I remember like the nurse flipped me to my right side with the peanut ball, and I was telling my husband like, this is not comfortable. When I was on this side, my left side, right side, left, you get it, I'm pointing. When I was on this side, I was actually I was like really peacefully comfortable. I have it written down here. I felt very calm and relaxed. I was able to get a snooze in. So I think at that point, I was still kind of riding on the Ambien, Plus the epidural was taking away any discomfort that I happened to have, and I was just calm and peaceful. So here I was, 6.5 centimeters dilated, not in a ton of pain, snoozing, you know, laying on my left side, like everything was great. At about 10:30, the nurse came in and asked me how I was doing, and I was getting some like heartburn or acid reflux. I had that a lot in my 3rd trimester, and I think it was just the way I was positioned. So she ended up giving me some Pepcid through the IV. She kept telling me like, I can give you some Pepcid, and I thought she was just gonna give me a pill like that you buy at Walgreens, but it was through my IV, which was pretty dang cool, I thought, and it worked instantly to take that feeling away. At 11:45, the doctor came in and checked my cervix. I was 8 centimeters dilated and 80% effaced. After that, there was talk of, well, do we want to speed this up? Are we comfortable letting things progress as they are progressing? Because they were progressing on their own. I was in labor. I was 8 centimeters dilated. There wasn't any need to rush things, but I remember my doctor saying like, well, if we want to speed this up, we can give you Pitocin. So Pitocin is the synthetic form of oxytocin, which is the hormone that your body releases to put you into labor. When you're induced, that's what happens. They put you on Pitocin. And so I remember saying like, well, I mean, I don't mind. We can try the Pitocin. I was on Pitocin with my first because I was induced. I don't have any weird side effects from Pitocin, like, you know, sure. And so they got it ready. They had the bag of Pitocin like ready to go. But my contractions actually, like my body was like, no, don't do that. Like heard us talking about it and it kicked up on its own. So my body, I have written down here at 12:10, intense contractions, pressure, and poop feeling. So the poop feeling, you guys, the poop feeling I talked about a lot in my first labor and delivery story. That is when you know baby is right there. When you feel like you have to poop, that means you have to push and baby is ready, which means you are probably close to being 10 centimeters dilated, if not 10 centimeters dilated. So it's almost like instantly my body was like, no Pitocin, and like just was ready to go. So at 12:10, I have the poop feeling, bad shakes, and I pressed the epidural button a few times. Nurse said as soon as I started to feel the poop feeling consistently to let her know. So with my first labor and delivery, I remember the poop feeling sticking around. So it wasn't just during contractions, it was all the time. I felt like I had to poop. I was probably dilated to 10 centimeters a lot earlier than they checked with my first. With this one, it wasn't a consistent poop feeling. It's so funny I'm saying poop feeling. It was just like here and there during contractions, definitely during contractions. So she kept saying like, when the poop feeling doesn't go away, let me know, because that means it's time to push. But I never got there with this one. I never had the consistent poop feeling. So I don't know if that was the epidural or if that was the way baby was positioned or my body or what. I will say it hurts with epidural. Even with epidural, you still feel the pressure. You still feel the poop feeling. I was getting really, really shaky. I remember during every single epidural, I was like shaking, and I had to like, my husband was like holding on to me because I was like, it hurt. Like it hurts. It's not like a sharp, what am I trying to say? It's not like a sharp shooting pain, but it's uncomfortable. You know, it's not like the most pleasant feeling in the world. And so what I figured out and what I taught myself and what I learned works best for me is when I had that feeling to just release, just let my body do its thing, not push, but just like relax during a contraction as much as possible. It's interesting because when you get the poop feeling outside of labor and delivery, like when you have to poop, in my mind, or at least for me in my body, my gut reaction is to kind of like hold it in until you get to a bathroom, you know? Like you don't have the poop feeling and just like push and let it go, you know, unless you're wearing a diaper. You hold it in, you kind of clench until you can get to the bathroom. So my gut feeling or my gut reaction when I had the poop feeling was to hold it and clench. But I kind of told myself, no, relax, let go, let your body do its thing, relax with every contraction as much as you can, and just kind of like don't clench, just let it go. And I think that helped a lot. I think that helped baby get into the right position quickly. I think that helped my body do its thing more quickly. I think that helped me progress more quickly. I went through that whole kind of transitional phase of labor for 45 minutes. So I had the shakes really bad, contractions lasted about 45 minutes, and then it calmed down. So then it was like the calm. So I had this like huge storm happen for 45 minutes, and then I was just calm. So at 12:30, I think the nurse knew. I think she was like, all right, she's going through transition. This is it. This is gonna happen soon. So at 12:30, the nurses set up the baby table and the labor and delivery, or the labor table. I don't remember them doing this for Lincoln's delivery. I don't remember like the big surgical table with all the tools. They covered it up, but I don't remember that. It could be because I was in a different room. They set it up right in front of me this time. So they set up that table, they set up the table for the baby, all that stuff. And then at 1 p.m., my contractions were happening every 1 to 2 minutes, but it wasn't that shaky, crazy contraction like transit. It was just contractions. They weren't super duper painful anymore. I could feel them coming. The poop pressure, I have written down, poop pressure feeling during each one. I let my body relax and go release instead of trying to hold it in and squeeze it and fight it like we just talked about. I really tried to release tension during each contraction. As a side note here, I wrote down that I emptied my bladder every hour on the hour. It was kind of funny, my poor nurse. So I didn't have a catheter, like a full-time catheter in. So, but I could feel when my bladder was full, which was different from my first. I couldn't feel it with my first. This time I could feel it. And I remember telling her like, my bladder's full, my bladder's full. So it was pretty much every hour on the hour we emptied my bladder in some form or fashion. We had like a manual catheter she used. And then we also tried the bedpan. So it just depended on what, you know, I don't know, whatever she wanted to do. I told her do whatever's easiest for you. So we kind of switched on and off and we did both. At 1:45, my nurse repositioned me to sitting up in the bed. So we were done with the flipping from side to side. We decided to sit me up. So we sat me up in the bed. I remember when that happened, I instantly got lots of butt pressure with every contraction, but it wasn't consistent. It never felt consistent to me, but that definitely like plopped him down and I was like, all right, ready to go. At 2:21, now the times are getting, you gotta pay attention to these times, because at 2:21, the nurse did a cervix check and I was 10 centimeters dilated. She said, baby's head is right there. And I remember her saying like, oh, it's time. And I was like, really? Like it just, I don't know. It seemed like it was, I don't know, too easy. Like, really? That's it? Like, it's ready to push? I remember her saying, like, do you want to do some practice pushes? Should we do some practice pushes? I was like, sure, let's do some practice pushes. So I did one practice push, you guys. One practice push. And I guess that was enough to just, like, push him out. Because she was like, okay, stop. We don't need to do that anymore. No more practicing. And I guess it's because, like, I pushed enough with that one push and he was down there enough and I let my body do its thing and we were just ready to go, that almost pushed him out. So she was like, okay, stop. And she called in the baby doctor. She called in my doctor. It took my doctor about like 10 minutes to get there, but I wasn't pushing during that 10 minutes. It was just about 10 minutes for her to get there from wherever she was. She came rushing in. She washed her hands. She put on some gloves. She looked over at me and she was like, oh. And so I don't know if that means like baby was already out. I don't know. I have this feeling like he was kind of slipping out because I could kind of feel it. Like I don't know. I didn't feel it with my hand, but I could just tell. Like I kind of knew he was slipping out. This sounds so weird, right? I did a half of a push with the doctor there and he was out. So I pushed 1.5 times, you guys. Night and day from my first I pushed for a little over an hour. This time I pushed for, I mean, on paper it says 10 minutes, but really it was 1.5 pushes, which is crazy. So at 2:31, Landon was born. He was born into the world and there he is now, 1 month later. So I did end up having a 1st-degree tear. The doctor stayed in the room and stitched me up right then and there. She told me, she was like, you have a 1st-degree tear. We probably don't need stitches, but I'm gonna go ahead and pop in 1 stitch just to be on the safe side. So she stitched me up while the epidural was still in. I don't remember delivering the placenta, but I mean, I assumed I did because I delivered it and there was no complications with it. I actually asked them if I could look at it afterwards because I was just curious. So she like pulled a little tub over, plopped it on my lap, and she was like playing with it, like pulling it out, and like she was like, here's like the rough side that I think attaches to your uterine wall, and then the smooth side is the baby side, if I remember. I don't remember. Fascinating to look at. Didn't keep it. That was long after though that she plopped it on my belly. But so once I delivered Landon, they instantly pulled him out and they put him right on my chest. I was wearing a bra, but I remember like somewhere before I started pushing, my nurse unhooked my IV so I could take off my bra because I wanted to do skin to skin immediately. So they immediately put him on me. He immediately started crying. He cried a lot longer than Lincoln cried. But he did eventually calm down. So I wrote down, baby started crying almost instantly, immediate skin to skin, delayed cord clamping. I think my husband cut the cord. I don't remember. It's so funny because when in that moment you are in this like dozy daisy fog of just like euphoria and oxytocin, and you are aware of what's going on around you, but also all you can think about, all you can look at, all you can focus on is this baby that's in your arms that you're holding. And so it's just such a funny feeling. It's really hard to explain. So I don't remember my husband cutting the cord, but I'm pretty sure he did. After the nurses put a diaper on him, so he was laying on me, but they plopped a diaper on him like in a hat while he was on me. So after they did all their things with him, wiped him down a little bit, we breastfed right away. He latched right away like a champ. It was amazing because that's not how it was with my first, and that was partially me just not knowing what I was doing. So he latched right away. We did skin to skin and we fed for like 2 hours. So we just sat there and did that for 2 hours. And then after that, the nurses took him, weighed him, and I don't have it written down here, but he was 6 pounds, 12 ounces, and 19 inches long or 20 inches long. We ended up spending a lot of time in the labor and delivery room because they didn't have a postpartum room ready for me. So we spent about 3 hours total in the labor and delivery room before moving to the postpartum room. Also, I think they were trying to wait for my epidural to wear off. My dead leg stayed dead for a while. In fact, even when we moved to my postpartum room, it still was like a dead leg. I needed help getting in the wheelchair. I needed help getting in and out of the bed just because of that one leg. It took a while for the epidural to wear out of that leg. A couple of side notes here, 2 things that I wanted to mention before we end this video. So this time around, I did notice a lot less people in the room, and I don't know, like during when I was pushing and the whole delivery process and labor process, and I don't know if that's because it was just so much easier this time around. It went so much faster this time around compared to my first. I don't know if that's because of COVID. I don't know. I didn't ask, but I did notice the only people in the room, so me and my husband, they allowed 2 support people, but I just had my husband, and the doctor and the nurse. And that's it. And then towards the very end, they called in the baby doctor too. So a doctor for my baby. So we had the baby doctor, my nurse, 1 nurse, and 1 doctor, and me and my husband. And for some reason with my first, I recall there being like so many people in the room. I remember looking up and being like, why is there so many people in the room? You know, like after they put the baby on and I was looking down at my baby and I looked up and I was like, holy crap, there's like 10 people in this room. And with this time, it was so much more calm. There were so many less people, and I really enjoyed that experience a lot more. My doctor was laughing and joking with me afterwards, and she was pregnant also. She had her baby like 2 or 3 weeks after me. So we were just talking and laughing, and it was so much more of a calm yet euphoric, and just I liked this experience a lot more than my labor and delivery with my first. I also wanted to talk about the COVID testing because I did get lots of questions on Instagram about this. So I live in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. Like I mentioned just recently, they let me have 2 support people. I had just my husband. He was allowed to come and go as he wanted. Neither one of us got tested for COVID at any point. They do like a screening when you first enter the hospital, but it's very like, you know, they just ask you like, have you had any symptoms in the past, blah, 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 blah. Have you been exposed in the past, blah, 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 blah. Have you been tested in the past XYZ days? And once you pass their screening, their verbal screening, you put a sticker on and that's it. So he had to go through that screening every time he entered the hospital, but he was able to come and go. He was able to come home a couple times to be with my older son and let out the dogs and blah, 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 shower, lucky him. But yeah, neither one of us got tested at any point. We did have to wear a mask while we were in the lobby, the triage room, and the hallways. But once we got into the labor room or the postpartum room, we were allowed to take our masks off, both me and my husband. The doctors and the nurses all wore theirs, but we were allowed to take ours off. And that's it. That is my labor and delivery story, you guys. Baby was healthy, no complications. It's so funny because they put notes in our file, obviously, and during our first pediatrician appointment, the doctor was like, wow, it looks like you had a very quick, very uneventful, very normal, easy labor and delivery. Pregnancy and labor and delivery. And I was like, yeah, I was very lucky. And then I've had a couple of postpartum appointments since then, and I see a different person pretty much every time, be it a nurse, an RN, a midwife, a doc, whatever. And so every one of them has said, you had a really nice labor and delivery, like textbook, easy, uncomplicated. I was like, yes, and I'm very, very grateful for it. That is my labor and delivery story. Again, it's not always scary. It's not something you have to worry about. I was in minimal pain. The epidural wasn't pleasant at first, you know, getting it poked into your back. That transitional 45 minutes of contractions was not great. But other than that, you know, I would do it again. I would do it again multiple times if I had to. I wouldn't do it every day of my life, but I would do it again. I want to talk about my 9th month of pregnancy. I want to talk about my postpartum preeclampsia because I did get that. But those are topics for another video. So I hope that you guys enjoyed watching, and yeah, I'll talk to you next time. Bye.